Hi everyone, today I'm going to show you how to assemble and paint an Astra Militarum Scout Sentinel. I'll also show you how to magnetize the weapon, allowing you to swap between a missile launcher and autocannon. A bit about me, I cover all aspects of Astra Militarum and release a video every week. So subscribe for more if you enjoy everything Imperial Guard. Also, if you want to jump forward to the painting part of this video, skip forward now to about the 5-minute mark. You can see in the background there, I've removed all parts from the frame and removed all mold lines as well, and placed in corresponding little piles of each section. I find this helpful as it helps me work out how it all comes together. And you can see here I'm gluing together just the main joint area. Next I'll then thoroughly dry fit the legs. They are quite fiddly to start with, so really do dry fit them. And that piece there is the joining part between what you call almost the walker's thighs and its shin bone, so to say. And you can see just on in the background with the piece I pick up now, there's like some holes there, little tiny holes. They light up to a little like pin, and that basically keeps the leg in the position you choose. So now I'm dry fitting the second leg whilst the first leg is drying, and this is when you work out how you want it to appear, either be it walking forward or maybe standing still. Now obviously glue up the second leg, and then set this aside to dry. So next I'm going to magnetize the missile launcher and the autocannon. Start off by removing the holding pin on the actual weapons, and I'm now using a 2mm magnet with some super glue and putting them in place on the weapons. Set these aside and let them dry for at least a good 10 minutes with a super glue. Next, I'm basically putting in a 2mm magnet into the body of the Sentinel where the weapon goes in. I failed a shot, but actually I drill out a fair bit using a citadel hand drill. And here I'm pushing in with the tip of a pair of pliers that magnet. And you can see as a demo there, it fits really well. And I think it's a great idea to do this to give yourself the option between the two weapon types. Right, back onto the legs. Again, more dry fitting, and this time gluing basically the main rotator joint area to the legs. Most important here is making sure that this section I'm holding here is up nice and horizontal. We're not dipping forward or backwards too much. So that glue now set aside to dry. Assemble the cockpit, which is pretty straightforward. Obviously make sure it's all nice and flush with no major gaps. Particularly I think in the when you add the exhaust pipe to the back, you could probably make a mistake here, but just get it nice and flush. Then on to making the missile launcher, if you are using it. Make sure again it's nice and flush. It is made quite easy because once you add on the actual front of the missiles, it will hold it naturally nicely in place. Then do the pilot, and I recommend to do the arms first and then set aside to dry and do the head a bit later. Right, so now onto all like the I guess accessories for the cockpit. Starting off with the front shield, or the front decoration you can call it. I go for the one using the spotlight there. I personally prefer this one over the one with the Imperial Eagle, the great big one. Next I then do the little battery pack thingamajig, I guess, which is shoved in there quite nice and neat. And then onto the aiming device for the autocannon and the missile launcher. Of course, if you're using different weapons, this will be in a different attachment. But this one there is used for the missile launcher and autocannon. And then finally is also the smoke grenade launcher as well. Of course, if you're using hunter killer missile, auger array, and all the chainsword added on as well. And finally, with the arms dry, I then glue the chap's head into place, and of course choose how you want them to look. I personally have my guide looking at the instrument panels. Right, so finishing off the legs. I'm adding plastic cement to the bottom of the ball joint, and then I'll be attaching the foot or the feet onto the ball joints. When you do this, obviously make sure, as you can see there, the longest part of the feet is facing forward. And you want to make sure that the feet are lining up nice and straight to the rest of the legs. We can then now at the same time glue the feet onto the board or the base of the model. As I said, you want to make sure the feet are correctly facing forward at nice straight angles, and then of course position it in a way that you're happy for it to be on the base. I think thinking down the line, you want to have some room or position in a way that you can maybe add some extra terrain pieces to the base. and certainly when I base up my Sentinels, I put a bit more effort and some more larger pieces to give it a bit more theatre. So everything's good in place, and now I'm going to spray the model. You can see I've attached some blue tack on the ball joint there to protect it from paint, and holding in place the roll bars with some blue tack. Next, the pilot is sat on top of a wine bottle cork with some blue tack, and likewise the chassis, or the cockpit, is set in place with some blue tack. And I'm adding some grenades as well, which I'm holding in place with blue tack at this point. Then for the two weapon types, I'm using again blue tack to hold in place on the sprue, so it's easy to spray, hit all angles when I undercoat. So I've undercoated the entire miniature in Mechanicus Standard Grey, the Citadel spray paint. It's certainly much easier spraying a model like this in individual sections, as you can easily access all the little nooks and crannies on the model. I then dry brush the entire miniature in Administratum Grey. Next, I'm using Agrax Earthshade to add depth to all the little recesses where dirt and grime naturally build up and settle. You can't do this with like a big brush wholesale, but instead use a relatively smaller brush and add exactly to all the areas you want it to be sitting in. So with the shade dry, you then re-dry brush again with Administratum Grey on the same areas. Then we move on to some detailed work, and using Abaddon black, we paint the pistons on the legs, the rubber hoses, the ball joint on the feet, the metallic hose on the cabin, the exhaust pipes, and also the autocannon. Then we use Leadblecher to paint these same areas. And sticking with metallics, then also use Hashut copper to paint the two Aquillas on the cabin, one on the autocannon, and also the skull on the missile launcher. Cool, so now to paint the cabin sensors, and I use Mephiston red as a base, and apply this to also the missile tips and the sensor on the autocannon. Next, using Macragge blue on the front lamp, and also Rhino brown on the cabin chair. I only paint the top of the chair because obviously the pilot's going to be sitting there and it'll block the rest from view. I then give the sensors a bit of a glow by mixing the Mephiston red with Yriel yellow and paint it on the centre of the one on the outside on the right, and on the edges of the sensors on the front of the cabin. Now to do some edge highlighting on the autocannon with Eshin grey, and also on the rubber hoses and rubber seals on the leg pistons. And finally, to make all the little details pop, I use Nuln oil shade to pick out the edges of the front lamp and also the side sensors. Also on the skull of the missile launcher, and also the various Aquillas found across the model. On the metallics of the autocannon, and also the various piston arms and the exhaust pipes. Here I'm actually using a product by AK Interactive, which is a browner track wash, but you can just use Nuln oil. And finally, for the exhaust pipes, I dry brush them with Abaddon black on the tips to give them a bit of a grimier, sooty sort of look. Cool, so now to the pilot. I give my army an urban winter style camo scheme, which is inspired by the Craftcast jackals found in the Codex. So I've undercoated him in Macragge blue, the Citadel spray paint, and I paint his boots, the joystick, and his helmet chin strap in Abaddon black. I then pick out his skin using Cadian Fleshtones, and then use Leadblecher to pick out the details on the joystick. I then use Hashut copper once again on the helmet Aquila, and for the instrument panel on the joystick, I use Waagh green to start. So with that green dry, I then mix the Waagh green with Yriel yellow to create some edging to give it like an LCD screen type display or glow on the instrument panel. Next, I'm highlighting the edges of his uniform with Alaitoc blue, and now I'm creating the camo scheme first with Corvus black and next with Ceramite white. Now I shade his skin with Reikland Fleshtones and do any edging work as well with Nuln oil on the joystick and also the helmet Aquila, and finally using Agrax Earthshade on his uniform. Right, so now to a super exciting part, which is gluing in place the pilot and the cabin. When you glue the cabin in place, make sure it's horizontal to the legs and support it whilst it dries, like I am here with a box of cat food. Once it's dry, you can then affix any transfers into desired positions. And to help with this, I recommend using products by Microscale Industries that help the decals to better adhere and also achieve that real painted on look and removing any shine from the transfers. Right, so the final stage is weathering. And for this you'll need some sponge. And I'm using sponge from a model transport case, but you could use kitchen sponge as long as it's clean. With your Abaddon black, dab some onto the sponge and clean away the majority on a paper towel. Now carefully dab it onto the parts of the model you want to look like the paint's been chipped off or worn away. The obvious spots will be the feet and the legs. I also like to rough up the cockpit a bit as well, and also around the cabin door where the pilots climbed in and out of the vehicle. Now repeat the process again using Leadblecher and dab it onto areas you've done in black. This represents where the paint has been worn right down to the bare metal. Obviously be a bit less liberal with this and use a detail brush if necessary to edge out any detail like I am on the door of the cabin here. Rightio, so the paint job is all finished. Well done. All you've got to do now is varnish the model to protect it and of course create the base. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I found it easy to follow and also to paint this colour scheme. And of course I'm using Mechanicus Standard Grey, but you could replicate this process using any other spray paint colours. If you've got any questions about this process, shout it in the comments. And I cover everything Astra Militarum and release a video about them once a week. So if you love Imperial Guard, please subscribe for more. Thanks for watching. See you next time.